Anything wacky ever happened to you while you're up there delivering the homily? Like, has anybody ever shouted out? I just always wonder because it's
Oh
in
yeah.
part a performance, and people love to mess
Yeah.
with people who are performing.
Not a lot, but sometimes sure. I've been preaching for what, 38 years, and just little misadventures. I remember years ago I wore contacts. And this is back in the day. They were called gas permeable hard lenses, which is a fancy way of saying they were really uncomfortable. And I was preaching with the contact lenses on in front of like 700 people, and something got in my eye, and I just started like to weep, like just water coming out.
Oh,
And the people said they were so moved that I was so affected by I said, no, no, it's the contact lens. I had to run off the altar and change it. But
oh
very
no.
rarely, but occasionally, yeah, people will get up and leave, or they'll shout out something, but that's kind of rare. Um,
Like
Most
me
people are
over at the
really
Episcopal
receptive.
Church. Boo, boo. No,
Yeah,
I
you
did.
you walked out. Yeah. No, once in a
I
while,
try to do
occasionally
it
I've had that,
subtly.
but not much. Not much. People are pretty good and they're pretty receptive.
Is it true that we're shooting for 7-minute homilies now? It might have been my friend Cardinal Dolan in New York, but I read something
Yeah.
about one of our favorite cardinals saying we should be shooting for around 7 to 8 minutes on the homily because you start to lose them after that.
The Pope has said the homily should be short. My own feeling, honestly, is like 12 or 13 minutes is about right. So I preach for the internet, every week, and we set the clock, I think, for like
But you're a
14
natural
minutes. And I
orator.
end up,
I mean, not everybody, forgive me, is as
yeah,
talented as you are in communicating.
I appreciate that. But I think too that we got to give ourselves a chance to say something. My fear is that, okay, here's the one chance we have to really reach people with the gospel, and I'm going to give them like, 3 minutes and a joke. So that
Mm-hmm.
bugs me. I mean, we have to be able to do something substantive enough to feed them. I agree with you. In fact, just last week, a guy took me aside and said, Bishop, you got to train these guys how to preach. You know how to do it, but you got to train them. And I said to him, which I felt for a long time, it's one of the hardest things in the world to teach, I think, preaching, because it involves so many different types of gifts, biblical interpretation of knowing the culture, understanding psychology, and then all of the rhetorical um, gifts. So it's a very tricky, difficult thing to preach, I think.
Well, you're a natural and you found the right calling. How did you decide to enter the priesthood? What were you always very religious, being, raised as a kid?
No, not particularly. My parents were, good, devout Catholics. Took us to mass every Sunday. Not ostentatious Catholics. My father never liked. He would use that phrase, wear your religion on your sleeve. He never liked people that did that. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be a baseball player. So most of my young years, I read a lot, but it was all sports books. It was football, basketball, and baseball books, especially. I wanted to be shortstop for the Cubs when I was like 10, 11, 12. The turning point for me, I told this story a number of times, but when I was uh, 14, the same year I discovered Bob Dylan, a young Dominican friar at my high school taught us one of Thomas Aquinas's famous arguments for God's existence, and it had a massive impact on me. I don't know why to this day. I wasn't particularly religious. I didn't disbelieve in God. I was going to mass with my parents on Sunday, but I wasn't interested in religion that much. But for some reason, I think it was a grace actually, but it just got very deep into me and started me on a path that I've never really left. I'm on it right now talking to
Mhm.
you.
Right.
So that's what started the process. But then, even like in my high school years, that was more of a intellectual interest. It wasn't necessarily like what I want to do with my life. That happened in college. I was at Notre Dame for a year. And while I was there as a freshman, the idea of becoming a priest began to sink into me like, okay, maybe I should really make this my life. And then it went on from there. But no, it wasn't like written into my life story from day one. But the
Hmm.
Aquinas thing had a lot to do with it.